cost. But what an incredible sacrifice of love that event captured. Just amazing. At any rate, as we noted earlier, Joe's traveling this week, so he'll pick up again next week where we left off with respect to leadership and the topics that he was leading us on. But between the earlier part of this year, when we started in January, and today, there were a couple of occasions where I had to fill in. Tom also, Havey here, provided some leadership during that time as well. But there were a number of virtues that I had presented earlier this year with respect to servant leadership. And I talked about mission. I spoke about excellence, humility, kindness. And today we're going to talk about the how the virtues of discipline and courage and wisdom are critical components of servant leadership. They are so important and so important to understand. So let's begin with wisdom. And let's begin with discipline. And when you think about the word discipline, what comes to mind? What comes to your mind when you think of discipline?
Sometimes it has a negative connotation.
Sometimes it has a negative connotation. Okay.
It's one of my weakest links.
It's one of your weakest links. It's interesting that you recognize that, Dale. Okay.
It's
What
hard
else?
to be disciplined. It really
Focus
is.
would be.
Focus.
Stick to the
Focus,
plan.
Ken. Okay.
Yeah.
An important part of being disciplined.
Think about, I heard a talk once where they talked about a river without banks is a swamp. A river with banks has power.
Yeah.
Focus it.
Yeah.
Good night.
You're brilliant.
I know.
Yeah. You know what?
Drop the mic back up.
We always say yes. That's one of your great attributes, Ken. Anything else, guys? When you think about the word discipline, does anything else come to mind?
Well, discipline requires commitment.
Discipline requires commitment. Okay.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Yeah. By that. Anything else?
I've always seen the word disciple
Oh,
within that word,
interesting.
but I still have a hard time connecting what the meaning of discipline is, you know, whether it's discipline for a wrong behavior or discipline for sticking to a plan and staying focused. But, you know, the disciples were focused on Jesus. Maybe they varied from time to time from the plan, but they always
Yeah.
came back to him.
Yeah.
But what is a disciple? Someone who's being trained, someone who's learning a new way,
Okay.
but
Learning, being trained.
learning, training,
Okay.
sticking with the training plan.
That's interesting
Yeah,
because
I
if
know.
you look up the word discipline in Merriam-Webster, those are a couple of the components
Mhm.
that in the description of that.
Yeah.
All great comments. I really like Ken's comment. I'm thinking about that right now.
He gets the gold
Well,
star.
no, they're all great comments, but you think
You're
about
just
that,
passing on what I've heard before.
but you think about.
Can you just restate it for me? I'd like to hear it one more
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
if that's
yeah.
okay.
Remember. See, a swamp is a river without banks or borders. And a river has banks and therefore it's focused and there's power in a river and there's nothing with a swamp.
So in one case, you got banks or guardrails where that water cannot go outside and it's flowing, it's directed in a certain path. In the other visual, there are no banks, there are no limits.
Yeah, it's a
And
map.
it's just kind of all over the
No
place.
disciplines.
It's static, there's no discipline. Boy, how relevant that is in life.
I'll always
Big
think
time.
the swamp is undisciplined now.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to get some discipline in you.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a great description. We'll talk more about that, okay?
You know, just a sidebar, of course, academic disciplines, right? It has the same origin that Tom was saying.
Yeah,
And I would tell students, you know, what these 4 years of college are about, if you're on the 4-year plan, is you're learning the the basic concepts so that you can, you choose a major in a discipline, and then you can join the conversation.
Yeah.
You have the tools to be able to participate effectively and join a long running conversation about some problem. That's what a major is. That's what discipline is, right? And so you've got to learn these basic tools. You can't just jump right into the senior seminar and blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
So the same idea, and of course it has the same social history as well.
It seems, go ahead, Bob.
With discipline, I think there's two, at least in my head, it's coming. Discipline is two steps: commitment to character, in other words, you're disciplining yourself to have the right character, and commitment to mission. You're disciplined to what's happening out you. So it's one's character, the other one is what you're involved with outside of yourself. And both of them require discipline.
Focus.
It seems to me that one of the common denominators here is being intentionality. Okay. You have to think about it and really move forward with being intentional with respect to discipline. So
Right.
we'll get a better picture of that in a minute. Dr. Tom, would you read discipline there in black in the first paragraph?
Sure. Discipline. Most of us associate the word discipline with punishment, and so it has generally negative connotations. This association was not always so. The word itself originates from the Latin disciplina, meaning teaching or learning. In 13th century Middle English, the word discipline first entered the English lexicon, used as a reference to the systematic instruction given to pupils for the purpose of training that, they're training them in a craft or to teach them a particular code of conduct to follow. Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary lists several definitions for the word, including orderly or prescribed conduct or pattern of behavior, and training that corrects, molds, or perfects the mental faculties or moral character. Yeah, exactly.
Dr. Tom, you could have wrote that because that's what you spoke to without even reading it before.
Yeah, I did.
You did. But one of the things that ends that paragraph is moral character. And I want to put a stake right there. I just want to put a stake. We'll come back to that in a bit. But that is so critically important.
Yeah.
The other thing that comes out of that is remember that people sometimes, just like Bill said, think of discipline in a negative way immediately, but it's not. But the positives associated with being disciplined are significant. They're measurable. And the positives of building discipline into your life not only has an impact on us as individuals, but it also impacts all the people within our realm of influence in a very, very big way. Socially, financially, love, all kinds of different ways. Because an undisciplined man, an undisciplined father, an undisciplined grandfather, an undisciplined business leader will bring chaos, could bring chaos and collateral damage on his family. That cannot be debated. And there's many, many examples of that. Okay. When I started thinking about this paragraph last night, I wrote down a couple of notes that being disciplined, and I think Bob mentioned it, being intentional about things, runs counterintuitive to the natural behaviors of man. I'm going to say it again. It runs counterintuitive to the natural behaviors of man of just doing anything you want to do. Remember that phrase of the 70s? If it doesn't hurt anybody else, it's okay to do it, or do it if it doesn't hurt anybody else.
If it feels good,
If it
do it.
feels good, do it. Okay? Just do it. How's that as a reference to discipline? Like,
Yeah.
okay, like not. The other one was, what does leadership look like if there's an individual in leadership who is not disciplined? What does that look like for the rest of the organization? What does that look like in your home? Chaos.
Remember the cartoon of the Tasmanian Devil?
Yeah.
On Looney Tunes? Everywhere he goes, it's just.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Who wants to follow that?
Yeah. Who wants to follow that? So Joe said this a number of years ago. I just had this in the study. It says discipline and rigor are the fabric of leadership. Nothing works without them. Nothing is sustainable, executable, or enduring without the truth and brutal honesty of discipline.
Hmm.
Discipline is what gives us freedom. Think about it like a road trip. If I obey the rules, I can drive anywhere I want to, for as long as I want to, and never get stopped. Now that's real freedom. Discipline is truth. That's interesting.
Mhm.
You can't fake rigor. Discipline strengthens, protects, enriches everything it touches. When I make that statement, when I just communicate that statement, I'm gonna say it one more time. I want you to think of your families. Discipline is truth. It can't fake rigor. Discipline strengthens, protects, enriches everything it touches.
Mhm.
And isn't that what we're called to do, beginning with our families? With the
Discipline and
church.
consistency, yeah,
Consistency.
you gotta be.
Yeah, good point, Bill. Good
I
point.
like this next sentence too.
Yeah, go ahead and read it out loud.
Oh, you know.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, this virtue is in two parts.
Yeah.
Ethical and executional.
Yeah.
The first laying the foundation for the second, at its heart.
It is. It is. So let's take a look at those for a minute. Ethical discipline means ensuring that a common beliefs on right and wrong are accepted and shared across the people you lead. If you and your wife or children are not on the same page with respect to moral decisions,
Oh, boy.
if you don't share the same moral foundation, it's a problem.
That's a tough one today.
That's a tough one today.
Yeah,
If you're in an organization and you don't share the same moral foundation with the person that you report to, or the people that you're leading, that's going to create a problem. If you're working for an individual who doesn't always make the correct moral decision and they expect you to follow along, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation. I have.
Yep,
Okay.
in there.
Been there. You've got a choice to make.
Hmm.
You have a choice to say, okay, I'm all in. I don't want to ruffle the waters going forward. And you know it's wrong. Or you can say, no, I'm just not gonna go down that road. Well, what did you do when you were in that situation? By the way, the scorecard's probably not 100% for everybody,
no.
but you ever recall being in that situation before? When your supervisor or boss said, we're gonna do this, and you knew it was wrong, and you had a choice to make. You ever recall being in that difficult situation?
Remember, you were talking about being on a business trip.
Yeah.
And the group wanted to go to, I think, a strip club.
Yep.
And your decision was, I'm gonna opt out.
Yeah.
And then turns out others said, well, okay.
Yeah.
Now, earlier, years ago, I heard another person in a similar scenario where he was stinging. And he tried to back out, but his boss was there and said, you're going.
Yeah.
So he went.
Yeah.
However, when the girls sat down next to the table, he was talking to that girl, the girls about Jesus.
Good job.
Kind of put a dent on the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, yours took courage.
Mm.
And so did his.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Because he was coerced into it, but he stuck to his guns.
Yeah.
And said, I'm gonna be the light of Jesus in this place.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I really gotta admire what this other fellow
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
That would have been.
Wow. It's a great story, Ken. Wow, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Anybody else have a situation like that?
I had business, so, I dealt with an awful lot of different companies and different, leaders, you know, coming into the market here. And way back earlier in my career, there was a guy from the East Coast and, you know, taking care of the business. But what he wanted to do is he wanted to know if, he couldn't just go ahead and, send some extra money to my bank account and get involved, you know, I mean, obviously he's trying to launder some money. And, I could sense what was going on there and no,
Mhm.
and, you know, I don't remember how that relationship ended, but, I thought, wow, I mean, there's firsthand somebody trying to play the money game And it was somebody from the northeast area, you know, you think, or Chicago and. So that's about as close as I've ever come to that group that we won't name.
Yeah, that's interesting, Bob, very interesting.
So what do you think about, was it Jesus or Paul? He said, you know, we need to respect our leaders.
Mhm.
You know, we might disagree with their moral character, we might disagree with their policies, however, they're in the, you know, they're in the position of leadership. We need to follow them. Whose face is on the coin? Give to Caesar
Mhm.
what is Caesar's.
Mhm.
So there's a conflict there
There is.
in following our leaders.
yeah.
we Disagree with.
There is. There is a conflict,
Mhm.
and I've given significant thought to that conflict, you know, in my own life, in
Yeah.
terms of decision making. And I try to keep it simple, because I'm not a complicated person. And that is, you know, everyone has a little bit different,
Mhm.
but anytime that the law of the land crosses God's law, then God's law always supersedes the law of the land.
Yep.
The law of the land is abortion, is okay. Okay, it's the law of the land.
Mhm.
But I know it's contrary to God's law. It's contrary. So there's no way, shape, or form at any time that I can support the law of the land. I can't, you know, I have to respect the leaders who are in the positions they are. I have to respect that. And I have to pray, and I'm called to pray for them. But we have a president who has advocated for LGBT. He's advocated for all that stuff that we're seeing that
Right.
is absolutely contrary. Absolutely, it's black and white
Mhm.
to God's word, to the provisions, to the recipe for life that God's given us. So in my mind, I have to pray for those, I want to pray for those
There you
individuals. I want to pray for the office, but God's law trumps everything.
Mhm.
And that's where the dividing line is,
Yeah.
for me. I don't know if you guys look at it differently.
That's a good way to look at it.
Oh, there's a pecking order, right? I mean, he's the leader of all, right? So he's got to supersede, and his
Yeah.
principles have to supersede everything else, right? So
Yeah.
it's easy. To me, it's easy because,
Yeah.
you know, he's the single one. So
Right, Jay, right. I think we're aligned on that. So, you know, fundamentally, it comes in two parts, ethical and executional. So ethical discipline means ensuring that common beliefs on right and wrong are accepted and shared across the people that you lead and love,
Mm.
Just as important as a leader, you must visibly demonstrate discipline when executing right and wrong in your own life, its credibility. So let's look at this for a minute. Your wife and your children and your grandchildren, they're always looking at you. They're looking at how you, whether you're aware of it or not, they're observing. And if we compromise our moral standards, whether it's with taxes, reporting income, that's just an example of one. But it's also with respect to looking at other women or all those things. And by the way, we all have clay feet, by the way, okay? But it's a reminder that it's really important to be intentional to always try to make the right decisions. So morally, I guess that develops, but executing it and making certain that we don't compromise, it's like Bob did, where the individual wanted to put money into his account.
Mhm.
It's so critically to be consistent.
I appreciate your use of the word try.
Yeah.
To make the right decision.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
opposed to, it's critical, we must make the right decision every time.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure,
It is,
but try to make
Yes.
the right decision.
Yeah.
Gives us a little leeway for our clay feet.
yes,
Mhm.
we do have clay feet.
Mhm.
And I like what Bob said about being intentional.
sometimes the areas,
Go ahead, Jay.
I was just gonna say that sometimes things aren't as black and white as we'd like to have them. So, you know, making a decision in the gray space, you know, there's definitely room for error there, right? So, we can do our best and pray about it and all of that, but emotions get wrapped up in those kind of decisions sometimes. And even with our best efforts, we go the wrong direction. I mean, it's part of the human thing. The flesh thing comes into play. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Gotta
Good,
wear your little wristband. What would Jesus do?
Yeah,
Everybody used to wear
good
them.
point. Yeah, I remember that.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the great things that just comes to mind right now. We could have a show of hands on how many of us have made a wrong decision, and there's no hands that are gonna go. But what comes to mind is how God deals with it when you obviously have done something you shouldn't have done, and you get caught in the act. And I'm thinking of that woman who was caught, in adultery and then brought before Jesus by the leaders of the group, and then starting with the ones that were the biggest leaders, they started walking away, whoever has not ever sinned, you be the one to throw the first stone. And all of a sudden, it's just Jesus and the lady who's obviously done wrong. And instead of saying, well, you're wrong and I'm right, boom, you're out of here.
I've never seen.
Yeah, he gave her a new beginning of her life at that point. Now go and sin no more, neither do I,
That's
Wow.
That is possible.
I mean, think about all the little things that we've done wrong. That was a huge, big thing that got caught in public. And it's like, no way she should not have a punishment for this.
Yeah.
And yet God himself said, neither do I condemn you right now. Now go and stop doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa,
pretty
that's like
powerful
being born
leadership.
again, a second chance
Yeah.
in life.
Yeah.
So that's just
Wow.
a reminder of how
Hmm.
deep God's love is for each one of us. It's really deep, the best you could ever have.
And to know and feel that level
We-
of forgiveness.
Yes.
I mean, how could you not follow Jesus after that?
Yeah, well, he who's been
Yeah.
forgiven much loves much.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Wow. Yeah.
but his mercies are new every morning too, right? I
Every
mean,
morning.
God's, I mean, he just, you get to have a new start every single day. I mean, the past is gone. God wipes away
The God of
anything that
second
you did
chances.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And infinite second chances because his mercies are new every morning. I mean, that is to me, something that creates such a peace. I know I can keep getting better every day, but God's got my back, and he's gonna deal with my frailties, by just washing them away every day and just loving me every single day. I mean, it's just, the whole thing about Amazing Grace, that song, I'm still learning how amazing his grace is. I mean, it's really unbelievable. I mean, truly.
Yeah. By the way,
Mhm.
Tom, I know, yeah, I was gonna get there. If you ever have an opportunity, look up the guy who wrote
Oh, yeah.
the music to Amazing Grace.
Yeah.
Story.
Yeah.
He's got
Yeah.
an amazing story that led him.
Oh, I've never done that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
check that out. It's
Wow.
Wilberforce.
an amazing,
Wilberforce, where he came from. what
Yeah.
he did.
Well,
What
it
is-
was-
No,
It was the slave
It was
ship
in the
captain.
movie.
in the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, you check that out. All right, Jay, pick up at Little Things Matter.
Little things matter.
I see.
Okay, little things matter.
Most of it.
It's easy to believe that when the major ethical decisions come around, for example, should I cheat on my taxes? Should I tell a customer a lie to gain a multi-million-dollar deal? Should I cheat on my spouse? That will make the right decisions. That's a tough one.
There's
Those
I-
are things.
that will make the right decision.
The
Yeah.
point there is this, but if we don't practice making small right choices each day, then it's highly unlikely that we'll be ready to go when it's time to make the big choices.
Mhm.
Every ethical choice,
Yeah.
whether it's large or small, is noticed and remembered by those we lead. So, have you ever heard someone say, well, I'm really gonna focus my attention on the big decisions? Let the little ones go away. The point here is no. Whether it's large or small, all the decisions that you make on a daily basis, they're all important. And you're being watched.
Yeah.
You're being observed by others, okay?
My God.
So something that Bill said earlier in a study that this morning was consistency. Consistency is so important in a leader in the decisions that we make. If we want people to follow us, if we want people to follow our lead, that consistency of making the right choice, and Tom, I love your word try, because none of us are
That was your
perfect,
word.
and we have clay feet, okay? But whether the decision is small or whether the decision is large, they're all important.
And with your family too, for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ken, would you pick us up on the last paragraph there, please?
Yes, most of us will never find ourselves struggling for survival in the Antarctic, with our life dependent on whether we can stay alert during our 4-hour ice watch. That's British explorer Ernest Shackleton's
My
man.
love knows this.
But hey, by the way, this is a point, Ken,
Yeah.
that, by the way, for you guys, whoever want to read an interesting story, it happened back in 1914 on an expedition where he was crossing the Antarctic and Antarctica. And long story short is the ice continued to expand, crushed the hull of the ship. 27 men he started with, they were all stranded. What do? Your vehicle to get home now is now gone, okay? How do you survive? Every man survived witness trip because of the tremendous leadership that he offered, okay? We won't go into it in a lot of detail, but he was consistent, he was resolute, intentional on getting his men out of that situation. There was even one of his men that as the ice opened up, where their tents were camped out, the tent and the guy in a sleeping bag fell in a crevasse inside, hit the water. When it opened up, he's able to get him out, okay? Shackleton's able to get him out. Just an incredible story.
It's a good movie too.
Yeah,
Tom, you were talking a little bit about that in your experience in the Antarctic, right?
We have visited is of course it's such a heroic story, and the to top it off, he sailed off in the little boat, which they have a replica of in a museum on South Georgia, but he landed on the wrong side of the island. I don't know if you know that piece,
yeah,
because he'd been there before, but the whaling station, Grizzly, was on the other side and where he needed to get to, so he had to climb with another guy over a pass on the pretty high mountains to get over to the other side. And accomplished mountaineers now have retraced the route, right? And it's difficult with ropes and crampons and equipment, right? And tents and everything, right? And they did that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
yeah, it's an unbelievable story.
He's buried there at that. Yeah.
So that's an example of a leader who didn't have a master plan to deal with this.
Correct.
He was making it up as he goes.
Absolutely.
Mm.
He adapted. But his leadership skills
Mhm.
and the
That's what
discipline,
helped
which
him
was
also.
Right.
Yeah.
not
Right.
only that gave him the ability to survive, but it impacted those within a sphere of influence.
Mhm.
If he wouldn't have been disciplined, if he didn't possess the other
Right.
skills we're talking about in terms of leadership, they would have all perished.
Yeah.
They would have all perished. Just an incredible story.
Great example.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, however, no matter what context we're in, organizational standards abound. And they are important for a number of reasons. For example, workday start time, office dress codes, home cleanliness, or meeting punctuality. For most of us, the standard embedded in our settings are unlikely to determine whether we live or die, but they can determine whether we succeed or fail as leaders. Being faithful in the little things prepares us to accept greater responsibility in the big ones.
So what do you take from that, Ken, when you see that? What comes to mind?
Discipline is not something we put on it. It's something we do, something,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's something we are.
It's not something we put on, it's something we do. That's
I love
good.
that.
That speaks to me.
Yeah.
I've been wrestling during this whole thing, and I don't want to say it's too far off, but the school shooting.
Yeah.
Right?
Again, another one.
Yeah, and just some people talk about it, and it started me thinking on this whole thing. There's a great deal of nihilism, I think, going on. now
Help
in
me,
the
help
US.
me with that fancy
What's it
word.
say? Nihilism is the idea that Nietzsche.
Nothing matters.
Nothing's
Nothing
important,
matters.
nothing matters, there's no greater thing. You live, you die, that's it. What's the point?
Yeah,
And so some people are gonna,
happy, joy.
some people are gonna just, nothing's matters. I'm gonna live, whatever I wanna do. Some people are gonna get depressed. Suicide rates are up. Some people are gonna get angry and shoot people.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been wrestling with that thing this week, just trying to think about what that all means and how that is so counter to the Christian paradigm. And I'm thinking for discipline, in that sense, compared to nihilism, is really a Christian idea. And as a Christian idea, we are honoring God if we're disciplined, because we are reflecting the idea that there's something beyond now. There's a
Yeah.
great thing that we're driving
Mm.
for.
Yeah, come
This-
on.
this-
Nice, nice.
Preach it. Come on. Yeah, keep
Preach
going.
it, preach it, Ken.
Keep going.
Well, you guys are funny. So rest of this whole thing, so discipline then is in a sense honoring God.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, sometimes, well, so I'm wrestling with this morning as we're talking. If we think of discipline that way, it seems so much more palatable than the idea of I'm going to be rigid and firm and be the banks to the river, so I'm focused. But this is a way to show love and honor to God by pursuing something, eliminating other goals, and pursuing this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, Ken. The Bible says that God is not a God of disorder. Okay, it's not a God of disorder. I look
Well,
at
that's
that,
what we're supposed, right, in Genesis,
Yeah.
go out and, he says, subdue or organize the world.
And so my unorganized shop is not our God.
yeah, well, you know,
It's organized chaos.
Yeah.
But no, truly, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm saying, yeah, I identify with what you're saying there. And it occurs to me that if that's not a God honoring thing, then that's something I need to be looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the bigger picture. Yep.
Yeah. And sometimes, yeah, if you look at the bigger picture, that helps us, this is the tool to get to the bigger picture in this. So,
yeah, that's great, Ken. That's amazing how things come out. The different insights that we provide, I mean, there's a reference there to life, you know, and I tell you, life is much better when there's order, as opposed when there's no order in your life. It's chaos. That's the
You're
difference.
finding that out in downtown Portland. There's no law and order, where there's no.
Yeah.
It just, the fabric of life just falls apart.
Yeah.
You gotta have discipline and order.
This is
It's, let me be a,
Go ahead.
could I be a bit contrarian, just slightly here, which is,
yeah.
can we, moderation in all things, can we be too disciplined, too buttoned down, everything is regimented and
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
so
Well-
we must have order and we will have order. I mean, can we get
Yeah.
No,
too,
Have flexibility in there.
Yeah.
yeah,
So you're talking about legalism, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
that's ultimately where you're going. That's the death of Christianity. I mean,
Yeah.
for those groups that live in that space, I feel so horribly sad for them because they completely missed the entire resurrection thing, right? And the living by grace thing.
yeah,
I mean,
right.
earning their way to heaven, not possible. It's not possible. It's a death sentence. I've experienced that with some of the denominational churches that I've attended. It's horrid. I mean, it's just completely contrary to what was intended by God.
Mhm.
It's, so you're right. And obviously I have very strong feelings about that. Um, I don't know if it's an ego thing. It might be. Some people, there's so much probably, that go into that, but that is a death sentence.
Yeah, I think-
There's,
Mm.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, I think, anytime the pendulum swings too far to either side, it's danger. And we have a great example throughout the New Testament. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, they were very legalistic, okay?
Yeah.
And Jesus became so upset, called them vipers, okay?
Mhm.
Because they were putting a burden on the backs of the people. They were adding burden because
But
of
they were very disciplined.
Okay, exactly what you talked about, Tom, okay? So discipline is critically important, but you can miss, the trees can block your view of the forest. If it's this close, and if it's only discipline, then you're missing everything else that's out here as well. But it's a critical component, but I would agree with you.
I was thinking about a passage, Micah, in Micah says that he has told you, O man, what is good.
Yeah.
And what does the Lord require of you? But to act justly, love mercy, and what? Love mercy and act humbly with your God. And listen, Dennis Prager, he phrases it in that justice in the macro, mercy in the micro.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that's, to Jay's point and Tom's point, I'm thinking we can apply that to discipline.
Yeah.
We are acting with discipline, but we temper that with love, so that we can make exceptions. So if someone is coming down too hard, as Tom paraphrased with his German accent, we can be human and loving to those who are going through a tough time and need some grace.
Amen.
One of the key things that came to my mind is, what will bring about proper discipline?
Mm.
And the word is accountability. When you know that you're going to be accountable to a teacher, a parent, a spouse, God, you think twice before you make your decision, knowing you're going to be held accountable. And accountability is a core to get discipline into your life. If you have no accountability on anything, you don't care. You just do whatever you feel at the moment. You don't care what impact it has on anybody else or whatever. You're not accountable. But if you're held accountable, like we've got laws in this city and the country, we've got bosses at work, accountable. And that those laws that are put in place are designed to make you think about it and know that you're accountable for your decisions. If we look through the Bible and everything, and all the stories that are in there, it's a story about who the creator of the universe is. And he says, and you're accountable. And of course, Jesus comes in knowing we're going to blow it. And he takes the penalty. But then again, unless you put your trust in him, guess what? You're still accountable. Anyhow, no.
This is the parallel.
The thing is,
Yeah.
so I hear what you're saying about the accountability, but I have to say that, the thing that, enables discipline is the love in your heart. That's the key. If there's a love in your heart, and that love flows out of you into humanity, right? Discipline is just a byproduct of love. So the
Well
key
put.
to life, the key to life is love. Discipline just happens if love is the essence of what you are and what your character is.
Well, I wonder, I'm following you, Jay, and I'm thinking, how do we define love? Right? The Christian view of love is there's a little backbone to it, right? And the world definition, so it's this wishy-washy, feel-good thing.
Right. I, for me, And it's funny that it came up today, but it's something that's been, God talks to me a lot at night when I'm sleeping. It's kind of a weird thing, but that's when I hear from him. And he told me that I felt this week that I really needed to memorize that chapter in Corinthians about what love is, so that I could make it who I am, because that's who I want to be. I want to be that perfect love that Jesus is, right? That's the goal. And everything else just falls into place if that love is pure and honest, right? Within your heart. So there's a lot to it, but love it's action, right? And there's so much to that. It's the most beautiful concept. And so I'm kind of taking a hiatus from the studies that I have right now to just work on just that one thing. And I don't know how long I may spend the rest of my life just in the pursuit of that perfect, beautiful love. But I think that's the key. Accountability, that's important and it's true. I mean, it's a fact, but that shouldn't be the reason why we act a certain way. I believe that we should act a certain way because of the love in our heart and the love that God gave us first to allow us to love him and to love others around us. So I think that the key is love, and that should be what dictates our actions more than anything else. Sorry to be like her.
Oh,
you know.
no, thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. Another good point. Go ahead and read that.
Proverbs 9:10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And there's that thing about accountability, that I brought up earlier. And the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So the whole core of life is, if you are completely divorced from the Creator, guess what happens?
Good luck with that.
Chaos.
Yeah.
But knowing that you were made by the Creator,
Who is love?
and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, means that you know that you're going to be held accountable for what you say, what you do, how you treat others. And God says, when you understand the consequences, that's going to make you think twice about the decisions that you make. And it's the beginning of you becoming wise.
And able to be a leader, an effective leader.
And it's
Well, I
kind of
tell
a
you-
little scary, to think that way,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
right, it's true.
Well, I love the inputs of both Jay and your inputs as well, because it provides a picture. It provides a picture of accountability and love.
Yeah.
They're all working together. They're all working together for the purposes of what we're talking about here. And that's just leads to the virtue of servanthood, leadership, once again, discipline. Let me finish before we get on wisdom. Bob, you teed it up perfectly. If we hope to maintain credibility over time, then we must faithfully execute the same standards and expectations that our context asks of the people that we lead. In other words, if we have an expectation, if we've communicated to others, this is the way that you need to operate or act, make decisions, if you have expectations of your children, then if you're doing anything to the contrary in your actions or the decisions that you make, you lose all credibility. If you and your wife are aligned on certain things, but then you begin to go in a different direction, you lose credibility. If you're working with a host of people where you're in agreement in terms of what the expectations are, mutual expectations, and you begin to operate in a different way, whether you're a colleague or a leader, you lose credibility. So consistency is critically important. And I think we've hit discipline pretty well in this session. It's amazing how some of these virtues can take up entire session that we have this morning. So we have just a little bit more time left. What I'd like to do is just introduce wisdom. because this is one of my favorite, topics, is the topic of wisdom.
Versus intelligence.
Versus intelligence, and this is just awesome, okay?
Distinction there.
Fits the-
Yeah, well, let's talk about that for a second. When you hear the word wisdom, what comes to mind, real quickly, when you hear the word wisdom, what comes to mind?
Comes with age.
Comes with age, okay,
Yeah, good.
what else?
The ability to properly assess situations to make the appropriate decisions.
Okay, the ability to properly assess. All right, make a good decision. By the way, it must come with some experience, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
I think there's a piece, right? I mean,
Yep.
when I think about just that word wisdom, if somebody is wise, they just are, I don't know, to me, the people that I've deemed as wise people, just they have such a peace about them, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, someone who exudes peace in the decisions that they make, maybe their lifestyle. What else? Anything else come to mind?
Well, when I said comes with age, it's not just age, but it's with experience, using
Yeah.
experience, practice,
Yeah,
Maturity.
which requires discipline
yeah,
to get you to
Yeah.
that point.
yeah. By the way,
Measured perspective has all that quality.
Yeah.
when I think of the word wisdom, I always immediately think of the application of truth. It's the application of truth, okay? I also think, and I had to chuckle a little bit because, I agree with you. Usually, wisdom comes with age because you have life experience. Okay?
Experience.
Part about that, life experience. But there are unfortunately examples of people our age,
Too many,
okay,
too many examples.
that don't reflect wisdom in the decisions that they make. And as a result of that, it has consequences on their families, it has consequences on them, has consequences on their careers, has consequences in so many different areas. So yes, wisdom should grow with age, but it's not a guarantee, is it?
Nope.
It's not a guarantee. And by the way, to Bill's point, that sometimes people confuse wisdom with intelligence. Well, there's a lot of smart people wearing orange jumpsuits today, okay? That didn't execute wisdom.
No pun intended.
Oh, dear. An unfortunate choice of clothing this morning.
Go Beavs.
All right.
Life is the sum of your choices, and you have to ask yourself, what's it gonna cost? What's the cost of the choice I made? And the intelligent guys that are in the jumpsuits,
Yeah,
they didn't ask what's the cost of it.
they didn't act like us, you know, this young whiz kid right now that, you know, it's just, you know, consequences you talked about, who's in the news, and he's probably gonna serve a very long sentence for being dishonest and doing.
The crypto guy?
The
Yeah.
crypto guy, yeah, young guy.
Yeah, crypto.
Yeah,
money.
But whether it's young or the older guy, Bernie Madoff, and there are many other examples, Jeff Skilling and so many others, who these people were actually touted on Money Magazine, and just, these are the most brilliant guys, follow them.
Brilliant,
Or-
but not wise.
Or take a guy like Jim Cramer on NBC Business, it's crazy, some of the decisions these guys make. And they're lauded as being so intelligent, but yet there's a lack of wisdom, and we see the outcome of that. All right, so we'll tee that up for next week.
Dennis Prager, listen.
Yes, yeah.
What does he say about
Well,
wisdom?
he's just a wise guy. He is very smart.
Well, and he gives an example, he went to Columbia for a while, and while he was there, he was seeing some brilliant people making what he thought were silly things. No difference between men and women.
Yeah.
America isn't any different or any better than any other country. How can this be?
Yeah.
Because they had no fear of the Lord.
Yes,
Smart, but not wise.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay, guys.
Mhm.
All right, we'll pick up on wisdom next week, okay? And I appreciate all the inputs with respect to discipline. If you get a pretty good, maybe perhaps a different framework, or it strengthens your framework when you think of discipline and the importance of it. Any thoughts on that?
I've been wandering towards humility, this whole thing,
Okay,
and, actually, overall, but this fitting into it, in that for discipline, we have to acknowledge that we're not the number one thing, that there's something greater than us, right? And I need to
Yeah.
follow these practices.
Yeah.
You bring up the, remember how the Bible talks about all of us? The eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you, but
We need each other.
So like each one of us has different sets of skills that God has put into our lives. And we need to use that in the proper deal, but if you're the eye, you don't look and say, oh, I don't need that foot, you know, but if you're the foot can say, hey, you ain't going where you think you're going, because I ain't taking you there. Every single body part is required to function, we know that, and that's perfect example, when he uses that in the Bible to help us understand how we fit together as the body of Christ. Each one of you is gonna be given different gifts and abilities.
Yeah.
And each one of you needs to remember, don't say, oh, I'm better than that part.
Yeah.
No, every single part is important, and you just need to say, God, make my life count for things that are important to you and what you're trying to do, whatever that looks like. If I need to be on stage, so be it. Keep me humble. If I need to be in the background, in the back room, underneath, in the basement, but you know, nothing can happen upstairs unless I keep the electricity on and the water going, but nobody ever sees me.
Yeah.
If that's where you want me, just let me know that I'm right where you.
that's a perfect heart, servanthood.
Yeah.
Servanthood leadership. And thank you so much, because in my mind, the foundation to many of these virtues is humility.
Mhm.
It's a foundation.
Yeah,
In all these other things, wisdom, courage, you know, all the things we talk about, the importance of being intentional in what we do. The foundation. of humility.
I'm coming to appreciate that more.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it's-
Yeah,
it's like-
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, I agree. I think that's true.
Doesn't have a negative connotation too. I mean,
Yeah.
people think of humble as being weak or.
right, right,
I mean, it's not.
but it's not that at all. It's
No.
not,
Takes great
You know, but-
strength to harness the power
It
we
does.
have.
yeah,
Yeah. Bill, just to pick up on that, I think I'm looking forward to launching into humility because it's in such short supply, but just how the world twists that, your point, Bill, to be humble is to be weak and you know, but also in another context, somewhat jokingly, we're just talking about humility, the virtue of humility, but then humiliation, same root, same meaning, right? But how to get twisted? So to humiliate somebody is to shame them publicly. You know, how did that get bound up in the virtue of humility? Is awful.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, there's good humiliation, and I'm thinking of, you know, in my track days. You train, you think you're ready to go, you get in the race and they just smoke you and you finish last and you're humiliated.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
for an instant, that's a bad feeling, but then in the next instant is, I gotta work harder. I guess I'm not as good as I
Well,
thought.
yeah.
There's putting myself in the right frame of mind. I gotta work harder. I gotta get more discipline.
well, it takes a sense of humility to come to that decision, Tom.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
You're picking up,
Right.
throwing down.
Yeah, as opposed to being so proud
Mhm.
and not accepting that, but it's really humility is self-assessment, where you're at, and,
Yeah,
putting others first, being outward looking, not inward looking, and all
Right.
the other. But Ken,
Yeah.
I'm really glad you said that. When this whole thing is finished, this study, we'll come back to humility, spend a little bit of time there again, because it's so critically important.
It is, it's
to
a
have
tough
clear
one.
understanding.
It's a tough one.
Yeah,
yeah.
All right.
It requires God's help too, right? I mean, sorry to interrupt, but
oh,
in order for us to really look in the mirror and see something clearly with some clarity, it does require God's help to do it, right?
yeah,
I can say for the 7 years that I've been retired and I've spent my time trying to become happier and better. It's because that God has helped me see through the clouds that were in the mirror, so I can see myself more clearly. And it's kind of easy to be humble if you're actually looking at yourself in a real way. I mean, it's easy to be humble because you know that he knows that he knows that you know. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
that's awesome, Jay. That tees it up pretty well, brother. Thank you so
Fun
much.
seeing Tom's reaction there.
Yeah,
Tom,
yeah, Dr. Tom. You know. All right, with that, are there any particular needs